Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Always fun to be here. You have such a wonderful audience, and we share many of them in common. I noticed a lot of them were over there on my channel on Thursday and Friday when I was showing the first and second episode of the Cryptid Report from right here on your channel. And nice. A bunch of them had seen it over here. They were over there anyway. The ones that were over there and didn't know that it was on over here were all like pretty happy about it. Went, yeah, we should. If we're up that late, and I got, people in the Eastern time zone that aren't up that late. So they're like, oh, we're really glad you're still showing it over here, Duke. And for all you folks over here that may see it live and everything and go, well, I already saw it live on Dave's show. Why do I want to watch it again on Duke's show? Well, because Duke's going to maybe put in some stuff that wasn't on here. Like the show I put out on Friday, I was talking to Dave and telling him about stolen Bigfoot calls. Those are on the show.
Yeah.
So the stuff we talk about on here might end up on the other version of it on my show where you can watch the video and the stuff that we're referencing. So just in case you somehow think that catching it here live is going to be the last word, you might be wrong. And you might want to check out the other version.
Yeah, and we say thank you for that, too, because, there's not a lot of channels out there, Duke, that actually collaborate with information, and the fact that we could do that for you and bring this segment over to World Bigfoot Radio as well is just a real show of professionalism on how we could all work together to get the same message out.
Well, you're from the UFO community and I'm from the Bigfoot community, and we're facing essentially the same dilemmas, issues, problems, and roadblocks. So it'd behoove us, if whatever branch of the obscure science community that you're in, don't ignore people from other branches from it. And anytime you can work together with people, certainly within your own branches of it, but even outside of that, they all have information to share. And there may be somebody in the UFO community that has some tiny piece of the puzzle that relates to the Bigfoot thing that we're never going to find out because we're not talking to those guys, and vice versa. So the more everybody works together on all this, it's like, trying to play a football game by yourself against an entire football team on the opposite side. If you have a team on your side, the chances are much better you're going to move the ball down the field and get a touchdown at some point.
Absolutely. So let's keep scoring, my man. What do you got for us tonight?
Well, first of all, general announcements. In addition to Dave's cool show now being on my show, coming up this weekend, one of the people that's in the chat room right now, Brown Dwarf, is going to be on my show talking about UAP. And I use this term pretty much the same as Dave does. I'm not talking about flying saucers and little gray or green men. I'm talking about unknown aerial phenomenon. In this case, we're going to be talking about things like sky jellyfish and air squids and things that people have also seen and got video of. And if these things actually exist, you could put them really close to the top of the list for suspects for missing 411. So you guys might want to check this show out.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely.
So, what are we doing? We are once again on David Weatherly's Monsters of Big Sky Country. And as you recall from previous installments, we're now almost up to 1980.
Let's go, my man. Let's do this.
This is just ridiculous to me. I'm like, how did it end up moving into an area with so many Bigfoot sightings everywhere around here? Like 2/3 or 3/4 of these sightings, at least, are within 100 miles of where I'm sitting right now. So it's like, yeah, there's been a lot of sightings around here. Okay, why did the Bigfoot cross the road? Well, to get to the other side. In the winter of 1979, a motorist on Highway 200 saw a light-colored Sasquatch crossing the road late one night. The witness told the BFRO, quote, "What had to have been a Bigfoot crossed the road in front of me at the end of the guardrails, headed north. He was well over 6 feet tall. He didn't even turn his head to look at me. He just walked across the road. His hair was not extremely long or matted, but light-colored, and the wind was whipping through it, and it was darker at the skin than at the tips," unquote. This sighting occurred at around 11:30 at night, and temps were well below zero. Now we're up to 1980. In 1982, a group of young men out riding horses on the Blackfoot Reservation in Glacier County had a Bigfoot encounter preceded by a warning from their horses. Charles K. Wolftail reported the incident, and it was posted on BigfootEncounters.com. The men had been riding most of the day, and with evening approaching, they had turned for home. As they approached the trailhead, one of the horses was reluctant and fought the bridle. The men pushed on, and once they were well in the brush, their horses started behaving oddly, stepping softly and snorting, as if bothered by a scent. As the reporting witness states, quote, "Our horses then began jumping in different directions like they were scared of something. The first thing on all of our minds was a bear. We began looking in different directions, trying to find the location of the bear. I don't remember who was the first to sight what we saw. I just heard him swear and asked the rest of us to look. We all looked in the direction he was pointing and saw this very tall thing running on two legs beside us, and then it turned in front of us. The thing crossed the trail in front of us about 40 feet and stopped at the edge of the brush. It just stared at us as if in the same amount of amazement as we were, and then it disappeared into the trees just as fast," unquote. The witness described the creature as the hairiest man he had ever seen, and it was well over 6 feet tall. The party returned to the spot the following day and found broken branches about 6 to 8 feet high in the area where they had seen the creature. They also found footprints, though no size was indicated in the report. Another BFR report details a sighting from the summer of '82 from Lewis and Clark County. Some teenage boys were near the town of Lincoln, staying in a cabin when the incident unfolded. Lincoln is so small, if you blink, you'll miss it. And the only thing that's there is a jerky factory and a little outlet where you can stop and buy jerky at the jerky factory. And guess what? They have their own Bigfoot shirt there. Every dinky, teeny little town in Montana has their own Bigfoot shirt. I actually got one. I'll wear it next week just so I can prove to you guys. Oh, my God. So here he was in Lincoln, staying in a cabin when the incident unfolded. He says, "I felt as if we were being watched. The hair on the back of my neck even stood up. We heard something in the woods ahead of us. The noise stopped, and we continued back towards the cabin. About 400 yards from the cabin, I looked toward the wood line, and I saw a figure standing up and looking at us. The creature was black in color and at least 6 feet tall. The boys found a massive footprint in the area 2 days later. The reporting witness states that he wears a size 12 shoe, but the print was 4 to 6 inches longer and a lot wider than his foot. The boys had a second sighting as they were walking back to the cabin. One boy noticed something in the woods and pointed to the area. Quote, I finally saw what he saw. Sitting on an old tree stump was what I believed to be a Bigfoot. We were only about 50 yards away from him, and I could see him clearly. It sat there looking at us. It looked in another direction while we were staring at it, and it was like he did not have a neck. He moved his whole upper torso and then looked back at us. When he did this, we took off running, unquote. A Montana correspondent told me about an incident from June 9th, 1985. Reportedly, 3 hikers saw an ape-like creature fording a river in waist-deep water. The sighting was near Kalispell in Flathead County. An encounter posted on OregonBigfoot.com comes from a witness who spotted a Bigfoot in the Hamilton area, which again is about 40 miles from here. 1986, no exact date given. The witness watched as the creature came out of the woods and approached a salt lick that had been placed out for deer. According to the witnesses, quote, he appeared to sniff it and then pulled it out of the ground and threw it. It was thrown 3 car lengths with a 100-pound cement block attached to the bottom of it. The reporting witness's grandfather retrieved a .22 rifle and started shooting at the creature, but it had no effect. As the report states, quote, the thing just stood there as if we were shaking them, as if he was shaking them off, and then made a whiny noise and calmly walked back into the woods. And the moral of the story is don't waste your time shooting with a .22. It's just like a pellet gun. It's just going to make them go, why? What are you doing? I may decide to be aggressive now. Stop doing that. Bigfoot researcher Bobby Short, RIP, received an account from Audrey Dibble at Walkerville, Silver Bow County involving incidents at Bull Run Gulch in 1988. Dibble reports that the tracks of 2 Bigfoot creatures were found around the ranch that her son and his family were renting at the time. Dibble's daughter-in-law had hiked a mile up the gulch the day before the tracks were found, and this seemed to attract the attention of the creatures. When the family backtracked the Bigfoot trail, they found that the creatures had followed the woman's track to the ranch. The larger set of tracks circled around the house and barn and into the fields below the home. The smaller creature stayed near the rabbit hutches. It's noted in the reports that the smaller creature's tracks were, quote, curled, unquote. The larger prints measured 17 inches in length, and while the smaller prints came in at 14 and a half inches long, Dibble reports. Quote, we took pictures of the prints, and the thing that struck us most about the prints was that the creatures had to have been massive. As it was very cold and the snow and the ice on the ground was frozen so hard, we could jump up and down without breaking through to the ground. But every print of both creatures went completely through the ice, unquote. The following week, horrible screams were heard near the ranch. Dibble adds, quote, at about midnight, my daughter-in-law called me in a panic and said there was a horrible screaming coming through the trees on the other side of the fields, and that she didn't think anything human could sound so guttural or masculine or angry. A report posted on the BFRO website details an incident from May 1989 in Park County. 2 people were out climbing on the west side of the Crazy Mountains and went to a timbered spot at about 7,000-foot elevation. The flat-top buttress had one juniper about 4 to 5 feet high. As the hikers were returning down to their car, the reporting witness turned and looked back at the spot they had left. Quote, I was surprised to see that in addition to the lone tree, there was another dark form that was swaying back and forth. I thought to myself, that's cool. There's a bear up there. Then the bear stood up and walked off the flat area down into a small rocky notch and up some steep rocks and disappeared into the timber. It appeared to cover the distance in about 4 to 5 strides with a very fluid motion. The reporting witness notes that both he and his companion had the sensation of the hair going up on the back of their necks when they witnessed the, quote, bear, unquote. Additionally, the witness's friend had a mixed breed dog on the hike, and the animal acted strangely, growling and generally on guard while they were in the area. Another pair of witnesses experienced a hair-raising feeling, not because of a sighting, but because of weird vocalizations heard around their property. In the summer of 1989, 2 brothers on the Flathead Reservation heard strange vocalizations near their family residence, about 20 miles northwest of Missoula. Hey, that's where I am. According to the BFRO report, the incident occurred in the late afternoon on a July day. The reporting witnesses said his brother came rushing to him and alerted him that he had heard something unusual in the woods around their home. The man described the noises, quote, I had heard a lot of strange sounds growing up in the deep woods over the years, elk mating calls, ruffed grouse beating their wings, coyotes, so on, but never anything like this. I can't really describe the sound except that it was a high-pitched tone from a living thing that was very resonant, powerful, and well controlled in its execution. It made the hair stand up on the back of my neck, unquote. The brothers rushed to where the family dogs were and observed that the animals were looking into the woods in the direction the sounds had come from and barking. Quote, I had never seen them barking like this, not even at bears, unquote, the witness reported. In short order, the creature's vocalizations were answered by another similar creature. Whatever was out there, there seemed to be two of them, and they seemed to be communicating. We continued to listen, nothing for a minute or two. Then we heard two more distinct calls, this time from the same general direction in the woods, yet separated. They were now coming from a further distance. Again, they seemed to be replying or communicating to one another. At the end of the report, the witness adds an interesting anecdote. Quote, I had another experience with a close friend the following year in 1990 involving what we believed were Bigfoot tracks. When we told her about the incident, my friend's grandmother, who's in her late 80s and had lived in the location where we saw the tracks her whole life, relayed a story about how she and her husband had seen a Sasquatch in that area over 20 years ago, which
Wow.
means around 1970.
Wow. Duke, we got 2 minutes to go here before we go to break. The one thing that I always love about these type of stories, Duke, is how there's always these patterns, that kind of show up. Like you just mentioned, 20 years previous, there was another sighting. And it just seems like you get these hot spots and they all seem to just kind of coalesce with each other, over time.
I think in a lot of these places, the locals don't talk about it, but they're aware that something is out there, and some of them know what it is actually. And in order to continue to live there, you've either got to, you know, make a kind of a psychic amends with the idea that there's going to be these big, huge things living out in the woods that are in this area. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to go to war with them, or are you going to leave? If you're going to stay there, well, then you got to sort of put up with them. And after a while, it just becomes like, well, those are those big hairy things that live out in the woods. And they don't necessarily talk to anybody about it. Sometimes all the neighbors know that they're out there and they'll even talk to each other about it, but they're not going to like make reports. And you really stumble on a lot of this stuff when you start doing the research on it.
Very true. Very true. Like even in my area, Duke, so we only got about 40 seconds to go. There are reports over the last 70 years around here, and the town is only 50 years old. I mean, it's been established for 100 and some years, but the actual town is about 55 years old. And the reports going back, they're all in one vicinity. But I mean, the point that I'm getting at is, but you may have a sighting at, say, this lake over here in 1921, and then again in 1974, and then at another lake in 1995, and they're all within like a 20, 30 mile radius as the crow flies.
Yeah, it's that one family. They're staying there and they're not moving.
Right? Get off my trees.
Get off my lawn, stupid humans.
That's right. Super Duke for World Bigfoot Radio. We continue right after this with the Cryptid Report on the Mighty SOR. Stay tuned. We will be right back. That's some serious super duking tonight.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have energy tonight. I don't know why either, because I recorded a 2-hour show for somebody else's channel earlier. I should be worn out, but I'll survive till the end of this one, then I'll collapse. Tomorrow I got to record Brown Dwarf for my show. So,
yeah.
Busy.
I woke up this morning with a brutal headache.
Oh, God.
Brutal headache. I got to my daytime job, and I was there like 45 minutes. I went to my boss, and I'm like, yeah, Dave's not doing this tonight or this morning. Dave's just not doing it. And the one thing about being a workaholic like I am, if you're not feeling good, they know.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not feeling good, they're just like, man, if Dave's taking a day off, he must not be feeling good. But I had a lot of sleep this afternoon, so
Good to catch up on it. I slept until almost
Yeah.
noon today, but I was up until 4 a.m. too.
Lymphatic drainage. Yes, that is included in my. I don't even know. I don't even know what the hell lymphatic drainage is. Hold on. Lymphatic drainage. Oh yes, yes. The guy who's taking care of me does that. Yes.
Man, it is cold out there right now.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Can't even enjoy a cigarette. Too cold. Colder than a witch's bube in a dry ice plated bra.
Yes. I took my son to hockey this evening and got into the vehicle and was like, oh well, I don't recognize this wind from a year ago. You're not supposed to be back. By the way, you're like 4 weeks late.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the peculiar thing here right now because it's deceptively not winter looking. Yes, there's no leaves on the trees, but we don't have any snow on the ground and there's a lot of grass. It's all green.
But
And
you
then
know
it's like
what?
12 degrees.
The Farmer's Almanac actually called for that, where it was going to be a late winter and an absolute like once the snow starts falling, it's not going to stop, but it's supposed to be a mild temperature wise winter.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Perfect time for that to happen. The heating bill is going to be through the roof anyway, so that'll help.
No goodness. Yeah, up here, just so you know how political things are getting up here with our illustrious, very honest and well mannered prime minister. If you vote for any other party than his, and you live on the East Coast, he is reducing your carbon tax for the winter. But us out west who seem to vote for a different party do not get that break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's supposedly democracy.
That is democracy. Here we go, Duke. 2 seconds. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Super Duke and World Bigfoot Radio's Cryptid Report continuing right after this. Reminder to you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can join the Space Travelers Club on Patreon. Here we go, Super Duke with the Cryptid Report. Continue on with us, big man.
Well, fortuitously enough, our timing was such that we ended up right at the end of the 80s. So here we go with the next decade in Montana into the 1990s. We're only 30 years behind now. A man in the Libby area of Lincoln County saw a trio of Bigfoot in January 1990 while he was walking his dog in the woods behind his home. The report comes via Ray Crow's Bigfoot Behavior Volume 3. The man said the thing was a human-like animal. The witness was alerted to the Bigfoot's presence after hearing footsteps behind him. He turned and spotted the creature about 100 yards from his position. He watched as the creature made its way across the field. The man's dog ran back to the house, presumably afraid of the Bigfoot, and the man followed suit. As he was headed back to his home, he saw two more hairy bipeds running across the field. He also reports hearing the creatures emit a screeching howl. In 1990, Bigfoot hit the front page of the Billings Gazette. Guess what town that comes out in? When the paper reported on sightings occurring on the Fort Peck Reservation. According to the July 24th edition of the paper, residents in the Fort Kipp area of the reservation We're worried about the creature's presence there. Indian Affairs officers spoke to the paper about the sightings. Quote, everybody's kind of keeping their eyes open, said Glenn Littlebird, agency special officer. People around here are taking it seriously, he said. They're kind of scared because, that certain type of creature has been sighted around that area numerous times, unquote. Teresa Buck Elk of Fort Kip claimed she spotted one of the hairy men running along U.S. Highway 2. She said the creature was more than 6 feet tall and ran on two legs. It crossed the highway and ran into the bush as the woman observed it. Buck Elk also smelled a strong foul odor when the creature was nearby. Law enforcement officers from both Roosevelt County and the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, investigated the scene, but they found no prints or other evidence of the hairy man's presence. The paper noted, quote, Fred Steele of the Indian Health Service said he grew up hearing stories about Bigfoot, so he interviewed several people in the area and believes the creature is, in fact, a Bigfoot. People in that area had heard strange noises during the night before the creature was sighted, Steele said. The BFRO received a report about a Ravalli County encounter that took place in September 1991. Ravalli County is the county directly to the south of me. The reporting witness in this case was an experienced big game hunting guide who recalls, quote, coming down a game trail on a ridge in deep, dark timber. My horse was tired. All of a sudden, he became nervous. A little breeze coming to me. Went about 75 yards and my horse started looking to the left. About 25 to 30 feet, there was a big root ball from a downed pine tree. From the waist up, crouching down, was a Bigfoot. I looked at him in the eyes. It was surprised as I. It was not an ape. It looked more like a man, but it had hair all over, about 6 to 8 inches long. I had a rifle, but I was so close to it I was afraid to make any sudden moves other than just keep riding. I'll never forget that, and someday if funds are available, I'd like to make an effort to find it again. Excuse me. BFR investigator John Salmon followed up on the report and had a phone conversation with the witness. Salmon gleaned a few other details from speaking with the man. The Bigfoot had reddish-brown hair that covered its body. The facial hair was thin and did not cover the entire face. Skin was brownish, and face was more like a man than an ape. The witness believes the creature was male since no breasts were visible. The Bigfoot was large, with 35 to 40-inch wide shoulders. Height could not be determined because the creature was crouching behind the root ball during the sighting. Salmon found the witness credible and points out that the man's extensive experience as a game guide has made him familiar with a wide range of large animals in the region. Well, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious. The guy's a big game guide. He can tell you if it's a frickin' bear when it's 10 feet away. Yeah, no kidding. 3 people hiking in the Gallatin National Forest in the summer of 1993 saw a massive creature running through the woods. It was June 3rd, and the trio was in the Portal Creek area late in the day. Concerned about an incoming storm, they decided to double time it down the west side of a windy pass so that they could make it back to their vehicle, hopefully before the foul weather came in and caught them. They heard something that was a distinct sound and not part of the wind that was blowing, something they thought was a howl. When they reached a clearing, they again heard what the reported witness described as a howl that sent a chill up his spine. Moments later, the hikers saw the creature that had apparently issued the sound. The witness described the moment in a BFRO entry, quote, something massive and dark and clearly running on 2 legs ran through the brush about 60 yards away and disappeared into the forest. I don't think any of us moved or spoke for about 5 minutes until we heard the howl, again, this time pretty far up and in the opposite direction than we were heading. We got out of there in a hurry. The July 1996 edition of the Montana Standard reported on the discovery of 14-inch footprints that were cast by researchers Shannon Kelly and Kelly Cundiff northwest of Helena. The pair said the tracks were discovered west of Canyon Creek. The researchers were drawn to the area after a number of reports led them to believe a Sasquatch was in that region. According to the paper, quote, it seems that last year, miners familiar with the forest and most of the things living in it heard screams in the night unlike the sound of any animal they had ever heard before. Kelly said. So on the 4th of July, Kelly headed into the area in search of whatever had spooked the miners. On Friday, Cundiff joined him in the search. Then, on Sunday afternoon, Cundiff spotted what the two had been looking for, a large print embedded in the hard soil. He said, the prints were described as ape-like, and something had pulled up plants in the area. Kelly estimated the weight of the creature that left the tracks to be about 400 pounds. The pair planned to return to the site, and Kelly himself told the paper he would be in and out of the area throughout the summer. Ray Crow's Bigfoot Behavior Volume 2 lists an interesting sighting from 1997 involving an Immigration Service employee. Eldon Garvis was at the U.S.-Canadian border, 27 miles north of Hobber on Highway 33, the St. Joe Road, when he spotted a Bigfoot in a roadside ditch. Garvis's sighting was somewhere between the I-15 on February and was around 12:30 a.m. Excuse me, the 1st to 15th of February, 12:30 a.m. Garvis said the creature, as he passed by and estimated its height between 5 and 6 feet, was covered with hair and black in color. Garvis returned to the scene later and found 3-toed tracks in the snow. It was clear from the tracks the creature had turned around and retreated back into the field that it had come from. Garvis speculated that his vehicle's approach had frightened the beast away. Reportedly, a lone hunter out in Cascade County in May 1995 spotted an 8-foot-tall creature that had glowing eyes. The thing had reddish-brown hair, but no further description was offered. Apparently frightened, or startled, or both, the hunter fired at the creature, and when he did so, the thing vanished in a flash of light. Researcher Linda Moulton Howe recounted the incident on the June 18, 1995 edition of the Art Bell Show. In Where the Footprints End, Volume 2, authors Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner, who apparently has the report that I had in his book, reported an encounter from Glacier National Park. The incident occurred on July 30th, 1997. The witness, Travis, was working for the park doing maintenance and cleanup. He and another unnamed park employee were dispatched to clean a campsite area in the park and encountered a horrible, overpowering smell described as like a dead skunk. Continuing on the trail, one of the men exclaimed, "Oh my God, there's a Bigfoot!" The pair saw the creature lying on its side, tearing into a rotting tree. The loud exclamation from the witness obviously alerted the creature, and it jumped to its feet. Travis reported that he felt instantly nauseated. The park radio that the men carried suddenly crackled with static, which apparently upset the Bigfoot because it started shaking all over and then let out a, quote, ferocious roar, unquote. This was enough for the two witnesses, who promptly fled the scene. Reportedly, Travis was advised by some employees of the Forest Service to keep quiet about his encounter, telling him that no one would believe him anyway and that others would just make fun of him. Travis ignored their advice, shared his encounter, and started asking other park employees questions about Bigfoot. The bizarre twist in the story, according to Travis, a federal agent showed up in a black Ford Explorer to intimidate him for asking questions and talking about Bigfoot. Bigfoot researcher Bobby Short received a report in June 1998 that strange 5-inch tracks had been found along the Blackfoot River. There's speculation this was evidence of a juvenile or baby Bigfoot, but unfortunately no further details are available on that one. An entry on the BFRO website recounts a July 1999 roadside sighting of an upright hairy creature. The reporting witness and a friend were traveling east on US 90 in Park County when they saw a large reddish-brown creature walking on the side of the road. Danny, the reporting witness, writes, quote, "It was very large. I don't know exactly how big or how much it could have weighed, but I do know the hands of the animal hung to about the tops of the fence post it was walking next to." Top of the fence posts. These posts are 3 to 4 feet of exposed post. There were two of us who saw the creature walking. It was about 7:30 in the morning when the sightings occurred, and the creature was in clear view about 100 to 150 yards from the witnesses. In a follow-up interview, Danny clarified that there were other passengers in the van, but only one other person was awake and also saw the creature that Danny reported at the same time. So Apparently, that was a pretty good size one. But one of the things you should note from all those reports that I've just been reading is the sizes of them. They're not particularly gigantic. And this comes back to a point that I made over and over and over again, that when generally a witness sees a Bigfoot, it's usually a juvenile who hasn't got the good common sense to stay freaking hidden and not let humans see him. And the older ones don't make stupid mistakes like that, which is why you rarely have sightings of the really big ones. Generally, unless they want you to see them, and then God help you, they're not happy, which is why they're letting you see them. It's definitely time to leave at that point. And so, all right, we made it through the 90s. Now we're ready to go into our century. Another thing that I find interesting about this is look at how many reports there were from the 70s. It was ridiculous. And in the last two, 80s and 90s, there's reports, but nothing like as many as there were in the 70s. What the hell was going on then?
I don't know. I'm born in the 70s, my man. I don't recall it. The only Sasquatch I recall from the 70s is from the $6 million man.
Yep. Yeah, Andre the Bigfoot. Yeah, I'm from the beginning of the 60s. So by the time, I had my first sighting in 73. So I do remember the 70s, but I do not remember there being a huge Bigfoot flap here in Montana. So in that there's all these reports of it and stuff, this is like another good thing to pay attention to, because apparently there were a ton of reports from around here at that point, but they weren't making national media outside of the state of Montana or the local newspaper. Nobody was hearing about them, because I was totally, fascinated in this kind of thing. If I would have known there was a sighting report flap going on here in Montana, I would have been all over it, but no, there wasn't any internet. There wasn't any of that kind of media to carry that stuff around. And the mainstream media just wasn't that interested. The local newspaper might report it, but they weren't going to carry it in the next, state over or something. So a lot of this stuff in these little regional areas, as we were talking about earlier, there could have been tons of reports there, but it just never made it out of that little area. So people outside of that area are completely unaware of it.
Unbelievable. Duke, out of all the sightings, that David Weatherly reports on, and he's usually highly accurate in his writings and teachings that he has out, there seem to be a lot of close encounters, obviously in nature, because where else is Sasquatch going to be, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of them also contain water. Like when we are in nature and around water, is this a highlighted prospect of where Sasquatch may be grazing, living, harmonizing, whatever it may be? And I realize that's a dumb question, okay, even though there are no dumb questions. But there are areas I've been in British Columbia where there's never been a sighting. Tons of water around.
Yeah.
Never a sighting.
Yeah, just because there's water there doesn't guarantee that they're going to be there. Although the flip side of that is also true. If you go all the way back to the 70s, that was that one movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek. And right at the beginning of it, the narrator says the creature always follows the creeks. It's always following the rivers. So even, there may be some areas where they're not around or anything, but in areas where they are around, going down to the creeks and the rivers after dark is a great way to have a random encounter with one of them. And there were some of the tribes on the West Coast that actually seemed to have had arrangements with them, where during the day was native fishing time and during the night was Sasquatch fishing time. And if the natives were out there fishing at night, the Sasquatch weren't happy about it. And also they would set up fish traps and stuff, right? And they just trap the fish. Well, if they didn't have those fish out of the fish traps by dark, guess what? Somebody else thought that since they were in the river and it was night, it was theirs to take, even though it was in a fish trap. And then guess what happened? So they'd come out in the morning and all the fish they caught the previous day were all mysteriously gone for the fish trap. Well, who the hell took those? Well, you told them nighttime is when they could fish. You should have taken your fish out of the fish trap before the sun fell, because now it's free game for them as far as they're concerned.
Right.
So there's a lot of reports of this. I had Exorcist on my show who was having a bad night, and he was up late, and he decided he was going to put on his hip waders and little inner tube and go float around in a local pond in Colorado and do some night fishing. And apparently they wanted to go fishing too, and they didn't appreciate him being there. And they made quite the racket, and they shook full-size mesquite trees at him until he got the hint. And first he thought it was demons, so he started trying to exorcise them, which didn't do anything but make them madder. And then he realized those aren't demons, those are Bigfoot. And then very loudly and publicly went, "Sorry, guys, I didn't know this was your place. You didn't used to be here when I was here 8 years ago. I'm leaving now." And he's paddling out of this pond, trying to get out of there as fast as he could. So, yeah, he didn't go back night fishing over there again either.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, that just kind of freaks me out. We got about 3 minutes to go here, Duke. It is that time of year where we are starting to wind down and nature is starting to get a little bit more cold outside. It's easy for the Sasquatch to be moving around at this time of year, but maybe not for us because those areas due to snow or weather conditions, it just makes it a little bit more dangerous. What do you think the Sasquatch are doing at this time of year, according to your research?
Well, by this time of the year, they've gotten most of their winter food supply piled away in some cave or something somewhere, and they're planning on not moving around a whole lot. You'll still see them, temps down to like 0 or something. They'll go out and walk around. If it's, depends on the ground conditions too. They're acutely aware of the fact that they leave tracks in the snow. So the time that they can sense storm fronts coming in and stuff. So we've actually had good success with going out right before a big blizzard and finding tracks in the snow because they know the blizzard's about to bury them. Or in between two snowstorms where one just ends and there's another one coming in the following day. And apparently they know it's going to snow again, and they'll just run around and make no effort to hide their tracks, knowing they'll be buried by the following day. So there's one thing to look for. But when it goes down to a certain low temperature, I think the only time they really come out is to send a sentinel out to walk around the edge of their territory and make sure they haven't got intruders or anybody in there causing trouble or something, and they just pretty much stay close to wherever their home base is.
Yeah, I can see that. They're not really migrating at this time.
No, they're mostly, at this point, they've got most of the food that they need piled up. And during the winter, you can still hunt on the nicer days and stuff. They can go out and wring a deer's neck or something and bring it back. And of course, the nice thing about the winter is when you throw the deer outside the cave, it ain't going to rot.
Oh, I hear you. And you know what? It's funny. The other day we were out in the forest and my buddy Phil all of a sudden says, "Hey, stop the vehicle, stop the vehicle." We stopped the vehicle, and in between the trees, all that's left of this moose is the spine and the skull. The fur is ripped off all over it. We think maybe a pack of wolves maybe got to it. But I mean, it's amazing how quickly nature cleans up after itself, man.
Yeah. Actually, Iron Dogger that was on my show last weekend, we didn't get to show it, but her and her husband found this moose skull. Nothing peculiar about that. There was no skeleton with it. It was just the skull. That's a little peculiar. One of the antlers was snapped.
Oh, wow.
That's very peculiar. If it was fighting with another bull and it snapped its antler, it would have been where it walked away from the other bull, even if the fight with it killed it. How does it end up with this skull with a snapped off antler on one side laying next to it?
You got that right. Super Duke, 20 seconds. Tell them where they can find World Bigfoot Radio.
You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute. I have groups on Facebook and over on the censorship-free platform MeWe. And I am now over on Twitter, or as Elon now calls it, X, where the X-Men hang out, like Professor X. So come on over there, find me, and visit me there.
We love you, man. Thank you for another great episode. We'll talk to you next week, Super Duke.
All right, buddy. Take care, everyone.
When the moon hangs high on the breast of the lake, and the bite of the wind is like a slap in the face, a legend of horror lurks in the haze. It's Bigfoot. A giant of a creature, all covered with hair, as tall as a timber, and strong as a bear. Y'all better not go walking out there with Bigfoot. Bigfoot's coming, gonna get you, gonna get you. Bigfoot's coming, so you better watch out. Lock your doors and bolt your windows. Bigfoot's on the ground. Bigfoot's coming, gonna get you, gonna get you. Bigfoot's coming, so you better watch out. Lock your doors and bolt your windows. Bigfoot's on the ground. For hundreds of years, this legend has grown about this big hairy man that walks all alone. A mountain monster 10 feet tall called Bigfoot. From the tales of the traders and trappers to the image on Indian walls. From the Bear Paw Mountains of Montana to the signs of the Great Shastas. From the Flatheads to Blackfeet and the Shoshones. He must have seen them all. And when the sun goes down in the northwest woods, if you listen, you can hear him call. Bigfoot's coming, gonna get you, gonna get you. Bigfoot's coming, so you better watch out. Lock your doors and bolt your windows. Bigfoot's on the ground. Bigfoot's coming, gonna get you, gonna get you. Bigfoot's coming, so you better watch out. Lock your doors and bolt your windows.